The media directs your attention to obsolete threat models. A politician warns of a potential military attack on a state like Venezuela. This is a systemic distraction. The calculus of symmetrical warfare, tank divisions, carrier strike groups, is a relic of a solvent empire. The kinetic cost is too high, the supply chains too fragile. They want you watching for the missile launch. You are looking at the wrong vector. The real war is silent. It is not kinetic, it is logical. According to Taiwan's National Security Bureau, Chinese cyber attacks on its critical infrastructure are up 113% daily since 2023. This is not random noise. It is a scaled rehearsal. It is the systemic weakening of a target's nervous system before the physical strike. This is the blueprint. The ultimate asymmetric vector is not a commercial AI drone with a 70% kill rate, as reported by DroneXL.co. The ultimate vector is absolute silence. CSIS and REHEARSAL analysis confirms the primary non-nuclear threat is a coordinated attack on the two pillars of Western command and control, the network of subsea data cables that function as the global economic brainstem, and the satellite constellations that act as its eyes. Sever the cables, blind the satellites. The result is not rubble, but paralysis. You create the blind Leviathan, a superpower with immense kinetic potential, but no sensory input, a fleet with no orders, a market with no data, an army with no eyes. It cannot absorb this damage. Its only protocol is to lash out. A launch-on warning response not to a missile, but to the terrifying silence. The core motive is a solvency crisis. Symmetrical warfare, the deployment of tank divisions and carrier strike groups, has a kinetic cost that is bankrupting even superpowers. Authoritative analysis from institutions like CSIS frames the Ukraine conflict not as a simple invasion, but as a systemic domestic liability for Russia. An unpopular, fiscally unsustainable war forces a state to pivot. When the treasury is empty, weakness forces a change in strategy. This pivot is a mathematical certainty. The old model of threatening, overwhelming force, such as U.S. warnings of military attacks against Venezuela, is now an economic bluff. The true vector for power projection has shifted. We have confirmation that Chinese cyber attacks on Taiwan's critical infrastructure are up 113% daily since 2023. This is not arbitrary aggression. It is a calculated low-cost strategy to degrade a target without firing a single conventional shell. The accelerant for this shift is the privatization of lethality. State actors no longer need to build their own arsenals. Reports on commercial AI drones, some linked to figures like Eric Schmidt, demonstrate a 70% kill rate. This commoditizes kinetic effect. The barrier to entry for strategic disruption has collapsed. Any actor with sufficient liquidity can now access asymmetric tools that were once the exclusive domain of nation-states. This creates an inescapable protocol for a declining power. Unable to afford a symmetrical response and unable to absorb the attrition from these low-cost attacks without signaling systemic fragility, its only remaining move is a disproportionate kinetic launch. It is a launch on warning posture dictated by economic weakness, not choice. The solvency crisis is the input. A global escalation event is the pre-calculated output. The central calculation of modern conflict is no longer troop strength. It is the kinetic cost of exchange. This financial model is now insolvent. According to analysis from the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, a state actor's $5 million main battle tank can be neutralized by a $500 commercial drone. This is a 10,000 to 1 leverage ratio working against the established power. It is not a sustainable vector for projecting force. It is a systemic blueprint for bankruptcy through attrition. You cannot absorb these asset liquidations. This inversion of cost and lethality is what strategists call the democratization of violence. The capability to project lethal force once the exclusive domain of superpowers has been commoditized. This is not a future threat. As reported by DroneXL, deployed commercial AI drones are already achieving a 70% kill rate in combat environments. Lethality has been fully decoupled from state-level industrial capacity. It is now a software and supply chain problem, accessible to anyone with a credit card. The operational theaters for this new economic warfare are not where the legacy media directs your attention. They are the systemic fault lines, the gray zones where national solvency is collapsing. These regions are not the cause of the conflict. They are the designated laboratories for it. Analysts at RUSI classify these zones as environments for testing asymmetric vectors with plausible deniability, staging grounds to measure the response time and political fragility of a declining superpower. Within these zones, the kinetic cost of power projection has been inverted. According to DroneXL.co, commercial AI drones, some backed by figures like Eric Schmidt, are now achieving a 70% kill rate. This is not a future threat. It is a deployed asset. Simultaneously, the digital domain is saturated. Taiwan's Security Bureau confirms Chinese cyber attacks on its critical infrastructure have surged by 113% daily since 2023. Each attack is a low-cost probe against a high-value target designed to quantify systemic weakness. The strategic purpose of the gray zone is to create an escalation dilemma for an insolvent power. Responding to a commercial drone or a deniable cyber attack with a billion-dollar missile or a carrier strike group is a mathematical absurdity. It accelerates the solvency crisis. This forces a shift in doctrine. The denial of AI use by police forces, as reported by Sky News, is a micro-level example of a macro trend. The state's reliance on deniable, automated systems for control and security assessments. Therefore, the protocol becomes inescapable. Unable to absorb the attrition without revealing terminal weakness, the declining power's only remaining move is a disproportionate, system-shocking response. The threat of a major military attack, such as the one the U.S. once leveled against Venezuela, is no longer a tool of diplomacy. It is the final, pre-calculated output of an economic equation. The gray zone is not the war. It is the countdown timer. The launch-on warning doctrine is a relic protocol from a solvent era. The logic was zero-sum. If strategic early warning systems detect an incoming nuclear strike, you launch your own arsenal before the enemy's warheads impact. You do not wait for confirmation. Waiting means annihilation. It is a mathematical function designed to guarantee mutually assured destruction. That entire system, however, was predicated on the integrity of the signal. The new vector of asymmetric warfare is not kinetic, it is informational. Analysts at CSIS have modeled the fog of digital war, where a cyber attack is used not to destroy a target, but to blind the entity defending it. This is not a hypothetical. According to Taiwan's National Security Bureau, Chinese cyber attacks on its critical infrastructure have increased by 113% daily since 2023. The objective is systemic degradation. Blinding radar and corrupting sensor data is now a standard operating procedure for state-level actors. This creates the commander's dilemma. The screens go black. The protocol demands a decision within minutes. Is it a network failure, or is it the prelude to a decapitation strike? In a state of declining power, you cannot absorb the first hit. Fear becomes the deciding variable. The doctrine forces the commander to launch based on the absence of information. It's an escalation protocol where a cyber attack is the input and a kinetic response is the only possible output. The escalation protocol is not a policy choice. It is a mathematical function. As a nation's solvency declines, its tolerance for asymmetric damage approaches zero. The input is economic weakness. The output is a launch-on-warning kinetic posture. The accelerant is the fusion of state-backed cyber operations, which Taiwan's NSB reports are up 113% daily, with commercial AI drones demonstrating a 70% termination rate against hardware. The vector is cheap, deniable, and globally available. It is the perfect tool to test a rival's fragility. The calibration shot is now a statistical certainty. Within the next 12 months, anticipate a coordinated cyber-physical attack causing a multi-day blackout at a Tier 1 Western logistical hub, likely the Port of Los Angeles or Rotterdam. The event will be attribution impossible, blamed on non-state actors using off-the-shelf AI. The objective is not the blackout itself, but to force the target's hand, absorb the systemic damage and confirm insolvency, or execute the disproportionate kinetic response the protocol demands.